I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome to the latest episode of Politely Pushy. I'm your host, Eric Chemi, and today my guest is Inbar Yagur. She's the VP of Marketing at Growthspace. This is a very interesting company. They're all about learning and development, training, but it's not the horrible HR training that we're all used to at big companies. It's much better than that. It's remote, it's global, and it's supposed to be making people and workers a lot better at their job. But Inbar's got a fascinating story herself, so I want to bring her in right now. Inbar, thank you for joining us. I know it's like 10 p.m. where you are in Tel Aviv. You got the headphones on so the dogs don't bark and the kids don't wake you up. Thanks for making time to chat with me
Sure.
here on Politely Pushy today.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It is a little late over here, but I am used to it, so it's totally fine. And yeah, I just hope that everybody forgives my headphones as
The
a
headphones are
precautionary
fine. The headphones are fine.
measure.
And for our audio only listeners that are just doing the audio podcast, they're not going to see it anyway. So
Awesome.
you sound American. Your LinkedIn bio says you went to school in America, but you've been
I
working in
did.
Tel Aviv for a long time. How did you end up there?
So I've been back and forth. I was actually born in Israel, hence the weird foreign name. Usually when people like start talking to me, they expect like a foreign accent, which I could do. I could speak in an Israeli accent whenever I want, but I don't. So when I was about five and a half, my parents just decided like they needed a change, so they schlepped us over to Los Angeles, and I was there for, I would say, like the formative education years, right? So like,
Where in LA were you? I grew up in LA.
oh, okay, so yeah, San Fernando Valley, Granada Hills.
Oh yeah, I was in Simi Valley. I was right over the
There you go.
118 there, just the other side of
Yeah,
Chatsworth and Northridge.
there you go. Yeah, so I went to school in Northridge. So yeah, it's basically I was there for like elementary school, which really were the formative years in terms of everything for me. So for me, even though I was born in Israel and I've lived here at this point more, English is my native language. I like speaking English. I dream in English. I function in English. Um, and then, so basically, my parents schlepped us back here when I was about in eighth grade, and I hung around here for a bit, but I had it in my head that I wanted to be a filmmaker. So basically, as soon as I finished mandatory service in the Israel Defense Forces, yes, we do this. I went back on my own, and I spent 7 years back in the States, and then schlepped back here.
You mentioned the mandatory service. So many of
Yeah.
these Israeli tech companies, and it's always, oh, former Israeli military officer. Now they're doing cybersecurity, and now they're doing some
Yeah.
special Apple hacking thing or whatever it is. What is it about that combination? The ex-military Israeli people that do these tech companies, and they've got the most advanced technology in the world.
So I'll first of all I'll say this, and that I was not an impressive, like my service was not impressive in the slightest. It was terrible. Like I had no motivation to serve. I did it, and in hindsight, I regret not doing more with it. I had it in my head that I wanted to go to college in the States. So I was just like, let's just power through this. But there's an interesting thing about the IDF in general, because it's mandatory here. It's um, how would I say, like, so you get the broad range, like, whereas in voluntary military, so there's usually like certain subsects that tend to go there more, and so it's,
Oh,
I
right.
don't want
Like
to.
demographics, like certain
Yes.
demographics in America are more likely to be in the military, where in Israel,
Yeah.
literally every single person
Everyone.
does it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
every single person does it, and the IDF is really good at sending people to where they belong, provided they cooperate.
Oh, and they have everybody available. So they've
Yeah.
got unmotivated people like you that's like, okay, then you're going to do some
Yeah.
unmotivating job. And then they've got all the high tech people. So you're right. In
Mm,
America, someone who's a very high end computer science person is most likely not going to go in the military. But in Israel, they
exactly.
are going to go to the military and then they will give them like a high tech job while they're there. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, in hindsight, being 41 now, and I was 18 when I joined, and it was a really good experience, and I regret not making more of it, right? I could have done more. Um,
So you went
but
from military to movies to marketing. So
yes,
how
I
did you get
did.
to movies? And then were you like the classic starving artist? And you're like, you know what? I make more money in marketing. I'm out of here. I'm never going to make money in movies. What happened?
I'll give you like the highlights. I saw Citizen Kane when I was 12 years old in a media class, and I fell in love with the idea of this like all-knowing director. Like I really fell in love with old school film. I fell in love with Charlie Chaplin and Orson Welles and Ernest Lubitsch, and it was for a 12-year-old that was a lot. But I have a tendency to this day. I have a tendency when I get an idea in my head, I just kind of do it. I goes for everything in my life. I've got stories at the wazoo of me like get something in my head, it gets done. And so 12 years old, I got it into my head that I wanted to be a director. And so my entire we moved back to Israel, and high school, I like that's what I had in my head. I'm going to film school in the States. That's what I wanted to do. And that's exactly what I did. I ended up going to Temple University for my bachelor's degree. And then I was at the American Film Institute Conservatory, their directing program. I got my master's of fine arts there. And it was, so I basically spent quite a few years studying film. I took myself way too seriously. I think this is part of the problem. I made I made a film about date rape, and I made a Holocaust film. And I look at it
Oh, I
now and I'm
shouldn't have
like, holy.
laughed then. If I had known where the rest of your, if I knew where the rest of your paragraph was going to go, I wasn't going to laugh at that. That was
but
oddly timed on my part, poorly timed.
no, but it's true. But it is funny. I took myself way too seriously. Like it's not like what the F was I doing? I spent my 20s literally like at the Yad Vashem and like Spielberg's Holocaust Remembrance Center watching testimonials for 2 years. Like it was a lot.
It's heavy. It's heavy for being in your 20s.
Yeah, and listen, I'm really proud of the stuff I did. Like my thesis film at AFI, like it won some awards. It's a really good film. I'm still very proud of it. 22 minutes, called The Violin. You can get it on Amazon. Um, but you know, it was by the time I finished, I was drained. I was living in LA, and I had already been like, this is before YouTube. This is before like the creator economy happened. Everything was still HD was still relatively new. Like
Right.
my thesis film at AFI was the first thing I'd ever shot in, like the first serious thing I've shot in HD. I shot my film at Temple University in 16 millimeter. Like this is early 2000s. Um, and I knew as a woman in Hollywood, I wasn't going to get anywhere at the time. I was like, okay, I can hang out here, get an internship somewhere, work my butt off, maybe make an indie, get into Sundance, and maybe get a studio pick, you know, 10 years down the line, they'll give me a romantic comedy if I'm lucky. Or I can haul my butt over back to Israel where I have a pedigree and I'll probably get money. And that's what I decided to do. But then funny enough, you know, 2 years in, I was sick of the hustle. It was this constant push to get money and to get backing and to get things
for projects. You mean for film projects?
Yeah. So I ended up collaborating on a script with a really legendary filmmaker in Israel who's since passed. His name is Asi Dayan. And we had worked on a script together, but it drained me. I was so tired, and there was so much work for so little reward. I was just like, okay,
you have to love it with a passion. Like, and I think sometimes I wonder if a lot of people in that industry, they're crazy, not because the industry makes them crazy, but you had to be crazy in the first place to want to do it and to want to stick it out.
Exactly. I realized there's two things you need to be a director. You need to be a megalomaniac, and you need to have really thick skin. And I had neither of those things, basically. And so
time to get a real job, huh?
Yeah. Plus, also, there's this other thing. Sorry, I'm really open about everything because I think we need to be. So I was ready to have babies, and I was having trouble doing that as well. And so, yeah. And so I was like, okay, I wanna have a family. I am drained. Let's do something else. And so I actually, because of my filmmaking background, it was really easy to get into content marketing.
Right.
And
it's all storytelling. It's how to reach people.
Yeah.
How do you translate something that someone doesn't understand and may not want to, they don't even think they need to understand it. And how do you make sure they get the story? And you don't have to keep constantly looking for backers. You just need one company to hire you, and now you've got a full-time job. You're not constantly pitching yourself.
Exactly. Well, it was kind of funny because I was a freelancer for 3 years, but I had this niche because I'm a native English speaker. This was just as like Startup Nation was starting to become a thing in Israel. Like a bunch of companies were
Right.
popping up.
Oh, so you have this unique background because I was going to say earlier, it's like you were in Israel, then you were in the
Mm-hmm.
States, then you went back
Yep.
to Israel, then you went to Temple for
Mm-hmm.
college, then you were in LA, then you were back in
Mm-hmm.
Israel. So this back and forth actually has it you given you an advantage that others don't have.
Exactly. Like, that's really true. I made my living from word of mouth. I didn't even have a website. Like I like the emperor had no clothes. People would just tell others about me, and I would get these gigs because of my English. Like, yeah, I had other talents, but because my English was, and I was able to, I called it Americanizing um, messaging. It
Oh,
was,
because all these startups, they're all Israeli startups, but they're trying to reach an American audience, American investors,
precisely,
American consumers. So you can help them with that
yeah,
storytelling.
precisely. And it was great. I mean, I have to say that when I was a freelancer, I didn't have any clients that made it big later, right? But I did find myself my way to Taboola,
Right.
which is where I really started to
The
grow Taboola.
advertising tech. Yeah.
Yeah, so Taboola is that, like, you may like widgets, the bottom of articles,
It's always
like,
those sketchy, like gossip ad links, right?
well, so that's the thing. There's that, but there's also, but there's the quality stuff. So there's a lot of knockoffs that do some cheap stuff. Most of what Taboola does is really on premium publishers, really, really high quality, brand safe advertising. And I'm proud to say I played a really big role in kind of figuring out how to make those spaces work for brands. I worked with Fortune 500 companies. I was really at that, like, saw that, sorry, I'm stuttering, but like I saw the
Yeah, it's
growth of that
10 p.m. You're
company.
allowed to stutter at 10 p.m. in Tel
Thank
Aviv.
you. Yeah, but I came into Taboola when it went public this last June. When I joined, there were about 80 people. When I left, there were 750. These days, they're close to 2,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hope you got some good stock out of that.
uh, not bad, not too shabby, not too shabby.
So tell me the culture difference between working in Israel, working in the US, like companies. What is it that one side sort of misunderstands about the other side? Companies on one side versus the other, what are they not getting about each other?
Okay, so there is like the stereotype about Israelis being very pushy, right? And
Possibly. I won't deny that.
and blunt. And and there's like the bad, like, some people think Israelis are abrasive. I think there are some of those people, but I don't really think that's. I think the thing about being in Israel, and I'm saying this politically agnostic. For the record, I'm very leftist in my views, but there is a thing about being surrounded by people who constantly are trying to kill you.
Yeah.
just gonna be
It's going to
gonna be
stress you
blunt about
out.
it. It's gonna make you be able to get to the point quickly, right? Like it really easily tears away a lot of the BS. Now, why we got into this situation, I'm not gonna go there. Like I already mentioned, this is not necessarily. I don't think the situation is unavoidable, right? But there is something about being, like, these days it's a little better because we've normalized relations with a lot of the Arab world. But most of the people who are now leading startups are people who grew up during the Gulf War. There was, an intifada during the 90s where there were constant terrorist attacks. Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated. Like,
Right.
if you grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s in Israel, you know what it is to have an existential fear,
Right.
right?
Right. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Sorry.
I
Go ahead.
want to, fast forward because I want to get back
Mhm.
to something. It's like we're about to get
Sorry.
too heavy here. So let
Yeah.
me
True.
pause that. Let me
Mhm.
pause that for a second. Talk about Growthspace. Talk about
Oh,
the
great.
current role. So
Yeah.
my basic understanding of it is it's a better version of learning and development and all the stuff that companies, like, I worked at big companies, right, for
Mhm.
most of my career, and they've always got classic corporate training, and most
Yeah.
employees do not like it. They don't feel like they're learning anything. It's just often a waste of time.
Yep.
Growthspace is designed to do this a lot better. So there's a lot of information and data you guys have learned about the Great Resignation, what do workers really
Yeah.
want, and what happened during COVID. So just briefly, what exactly is Growthspace?
Okay, so learning and development is a big thing in most companies. Okay,
Unless you
usually
don't
it's
want your employees to learn or develop, right? Then who cares, right?
well, even at companies who don't really care about all employees' professional development have some sort of learning and development function, whether it's through training programs, executive coaching, like there's always something, right? And the thing about, and I want to talk specifically about what has until this point been really relegated to exec level um, kind of professional development, right? I'm a VP. As a VP, if I wanted a career coach, my company would be able to, to afford one. I could get one for 6 months, 9 months, a year, because I'm a VP, and so as a VP, my company can pay for that, right? But anybody who is mid-level manager, an individual contributor, they're not going to get access to that, um, because it's just too expensive. It's prohibitively expensive, and there's another big challenge there, which is ROI, right? Most learning and development programs, you there it's very hard to measure impact, right? Because you've
Right.
got a coach for 6 months and it's like, okay, well, what did that coach give you? Or you have a mentor helping you for a year, and like, what did you get? Is this a success or a failure? You don't know. You're like, okay, this was nice. I guess I'm better, right? We have come in to change that. So we believe every employee deserves and needs one-on-one professional development. It is something that every company needs to think about in the entire level of the organization. But the challenge up until this point is it was not accessible because it was prohibitively expensive and there was no data to measure it. And we've come in and we've solved for that. So what the way it works, so imagine you had, so let's just talk about you, Eric, in your past career. You've worked at big corporations, right? um, if your learning and development manager would want to help you professionally develop, what would you do? You'd say, okay, well, what challenge do I have as Eric Chemi, right? Is it communication? Is it
Right.
working with
I
right?
probably had a lot of challenges myself, but yeah, if you were a less challenged person, yeah, maybe it says, okay, maybe I just got promoted to manager. I want to
Mhm,
be a better manager because these used to be my colleagues, but now I'm their boss.
mhm.
I don't know how to deal with that. Like I could totally
Ex-
see a lot of people in that situation.
Exactly. Or me, I've got a huge issue with prioritization. I say no to nothing. I say yes to everything, right? And so at your previous job, you say, okay, so you need to become a better manager. Let's work on your management skills, right? Let's find a person. It could be a mentor, it could be a coach, who will help you work on your management skills. And then, at the end of your process, did you improve your management skills? Yes or no? And then you measure it. So we do that at scale. What happens is, the person defines the challenge they want to work on. Time management, it could be soft skills like communication, it could be best practices. So like if you're in R&D, it might be agile development. I'm in marketing, maybe it's demand generation. You choose what's the thing you want to work on. We match you with the right expert to work on that thing, and then you do a 5 session, or sometimes 5 to 7 session growth sprint, where you work on this one thing with this expert. And at the end of it, you can say, hey, this was successful. Hey, this wasn't successful. It's measurable. There's nothing abstract here because you're doing it in a very focused, short way. It's accessible to everybody, and so everybody can get value out of that, right?
Where are you finding all these coaches then? You're finding
So
them
we've got
remotely around the world, I assume.
Yeah, so we've got, it's not just coaches, we've also got mentors. We've got, really high level executives at some of the top companies in the world. We've got an HR professional from a very, very well known recruiting firm. We've got a VP, we've got like a CTO from a really big Fortune 500 company. Like we've got great ICF certified coaches as well, and we've got over 1,000 of them. And we have a really great recruiting system and a really great filtering system. They go through a lot of the mentors go through training, and they learn like methodology of what they can do to mentor the people that they are matched with. And yeah, there's a whole operations team that is kind of behind that. And we've got a pool of over 1,000. And one of the things that you don't really get usually in coaching is we rate these guys, right? We rate these mentors. We
Oh, the
rate these people.
coaches are being rated the way that your
Yeah,
Uber driver gets a rating in addition to the passengers getting a rating. So everyone's being
right.
rated.
So it's experts, because it's not just coaches, right?
I'm sorry,
It's
I'm using coaches as in the wrong. I'm using it too
yeah,
broadly, but right, the people that are
the
like
experts.
helping you learn and develop and
Yeah,
educating and training and mentoring, all of those
yeah.
parts of it. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I'm marketing. Like I've been trying to get experts, not coaches, experts, not mentors, because it's everything, right?
experts. Okay,
Experts. So
so
it's not like the Uber driver, and let me tell you why. Because if you rate your Uber driver, you're usually just gonna give him 5 stars, because it's like, okay, hey, this poor guy's trying to make a living. It's more like Fiverr in terms of how you're rating. It's more like Upwork. Like this is not just a let's just give this person 5 stars. This is a
right.
really
And it's not a
qualitative.
commodity, right? The cab driver is
Mhm.
a cab driver. This is like this work was better or worse than someone else's work, and it cost me real money to get it on Fiverr.
Right.
Yeah,
And so, but of course, we're not a marketplace where we give really big packages. You can't just go in as a private person and buy, a growth sprint, right? We work with companies. That's part of the thing, is enabling this on a larger scale.
because are they
But
buying, let's say, thousands of hours worth of expertise? Basically, it's like, okay,
yeah,
we've got 100 employees that we want to train, and each
right.
one's going to need 12 hours of training, and then boom, there's a huge bill there.
Yeah, but I want to make the differentiation. This isn't training. You're not like learning how to, code JavaScript. This is your own personal development. So you
Okay, like
can
the way you
be
said, if you needed to learn how to do prioritization in your role,
right.
like that's what
And
you'd be getting trained on.
right, so it's really easy to teach. Like, that's not easy, but it's straightforward to teach a person how to code, right?
Yeah.
It's straightforward, and you don't need a personalized one-on-one approach for that. You
Oh, I
can,
see. It's
you know,
personal development. It's not just a class. It's not
yeah,
just a tutorial.
it's one-on-one, and this
Okay.
is the difference. And it goes back to what I was saying. Executives get this all the time, but we're making it accessible for everybody, because we're packaging it up in this way that allows people to work on a specific thing and measure their progress on it, right?
Right.
And so they get to enjoy the benefits of having a personal coach or
Right.
a personal mentor.
Right. That helps clarify. So what
Yeah.
have you learned through COVID? Because
Oh.
my imagination is COVID has completely disrupted
Oh yeah.
everyone's priorities now, right? Oh,
Hmm.
do I focus on my family? Do I focus on my job? Do I want to work from home? Do I want to go to the office? And what is everyone else doing? And the great resignation. So much has happened.
Yeah.
And I feel like so much of it relates to learning and development and
Hmm.
and the skills that a one-on-one expert could help an employee have. And if they don't have it, maybe they're quitting a job, or maybe a company could have saved
Yep.
somebody and that more money may not have been the answer and they quit anyway.
Right. So I'm gonna talk about this on a personal level. I joined Growthspace 3 months ago. I was a part of the Great Resignation. Right. So for people who don't really know what that is, right? For the last 6 months or so, people have been quitting in droves. There were, I believe the number, as of August, was between the months of January and August, of 2021. There were about more than 4 million people who quit their jobs, which is
Wow.
approximately 2 times the average that usually happens. Please don't hold me to those numbers exactly, but a lot of people quit.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
just
leave it as a lot. We'll quote you
a lot.
as you said a lot.
Yes, but it was, I believe it was about 4 million is the number. I don't have it in front of me. And part of the reason that they started quitting is, first of all, COVID. For a while, people were felt so insecure that they just held on to their jobs for dear life. Right, there was a crisis going on, so they stayed put.
And was the Great
Right.
Resignation now? Because I was thinking of it as an American thing, but you were in Tel Aviv, so is the Great Resignation in your mind, you think of it as a global thing?
It's everywhere.
Okay.
This is not an American thing.
Okay.
It's actually on some level even harder, especially in tech in Israel,
Okay.
because there's so many companies now that have been expanding so quickly here that there's vacancies to start with, and people are just it's now being called the big talent reshuffle in Israel, because literally, like, if you go in, anybody worth their salt in marketing, for example, has changed jobs in the last 6 months. Like it is, you are more likely than not to have changed your job in the last well, maybe it's
That's
a
so
great thing.
crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. So when COVID hit, you stayed put. But then, things started opening up. Like, things are still not perfect. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, but but the quote unquote, this is so cheesy, but the new normal started happening. People started figuring out how to live within this, and they started feeling a bit more secure. And all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, I just spent all of these months at home with my family, and I've just proved that I can work remotely. Why do I need a 2-hour commute? Why can't I hang out with my family? The world has changed. Do I really believe in the product I'm working for anymore? Right. And I can tell you that that's what happened with me. I spent basically 10 years in marketing technology and ad technology. And I, when things started kind of leveling out, I didn't feel the passion for that anymore. It's like there's only so many ways you can tell a person, increase your conversion rates. There's only, I was basically teaching people how to advertise on Facebook, and Facebook is so problematic. I can't be I can't do that anymore. Like I don't
Right.
feel right
Right.
about it. And so I'm part of this. I'm part of this wave, and
So
there's really.
meaning, the word meaning
Mhm.
comes to mind, like the
Yeah.
meaning for your job, just it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling passion. I was burned out. I was sick and tired, because part of the thing is too is a lot of companies experienced cutbacks during COVID, and so people had to take on more. So burnt and working from home with all this other stuff going on led to a lot of burnout as well. I was burnt out, right? And so back to Growthspace. Growthspace was founded, really started doing business in October of 2019. So do that math.
Oh,
That's
right
about,
before the pandemic.
yes. And the pandemic made a lot of companies all of a sudden need this. First of all, you like to help manage change, right? So change management is a big part of what you can do when you provide like coaching and mentoring for your people. And so there was a big need for that. There were people who needed to learn new skills. There's people who like all of a sudden got promoted and needed to manage remotely. There's all these like new challenges that come in. So the need to be able to give these one-on-one experiences to everybody at every levels of the company became much more urgent. And this is why we growth space really experienced this big surge and like this really quick adoption. Um and and part of what I think what's great about it um is that we are, I think, the only product on the market that says everybody in the organization needs to be treated like an executive, right? If you really want to grow your people, keep your people, you need to find ways to let them grow professionally. Most people, like, people quit their jobs for a lot of reasons, but one of the primary ones is that they don't feel like they're growing professionally.
Yep.
And there's been surveys that say that most people don't care about salary. They will take less money for a place that they can grow and feel challenged.
That's what I was going to ask you, is how much of this is actually an opportunity for companies, especially now that we've seen through COVID. The money is
Hmm.
not going to matter. Like if you say, I'll give you an extra 5%, 10%, 20%,
Yeah.
it's not a life-changing amount of money for anybody. So there's
Yeah.
things about their time and the meaning that they put to their job, commuting, family,
Hmm.
working, balance. What are they doing? That is
Yeah.
probably worth a lot more than a 20% salary hike.
Precisely. That's precisely it, right? For me personally, and first of all, I have to say, just on a personal note, I'm so lucky to work at this company. We are 90% remote. My CEO says the best perk you can give your employees is time with their family. And so
Depends. Depends how much you like your family.
It's true. But like we practice what we preach, right? I'm actually on my first growth sprint now, learning about prioritization, and it's awesome.
So who's teaching you? Are you using the growth space expert yourself? So it's
Yes.
your own customer
Yeah, I am. Well, actually, every growth space employee is expected to do at least one sprint a year.
to
Um,
improve their own skills.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also to understand what it's like to be in our customers' shoes. I could not wait. I'm so happy I have it. So I'm working on prioritization because, like I said, I have a really
So
hard
you're
time
not doing
saying no.
podcasts at 10 p.m.
But listen, I don't know if you noticed, Erica, I like to talk.
It's good. I'd rather have a talker
So
on the show than a silent. We don't need silent people on the show.
That's true. So I don't. So 10 p.m. Listen. Give me a chance to talk. I'll talk. But yeah. I mean, back to this whole philosophy of if companies want to keep their people, they need to invest in their people. They need to tell their people, we are going to treat you just like we would treat our CEO, our VP R&D, our COO. You are going to get the same things
Isn't there
that they
this
get.
isn't there this thing though that if I'm a company, I don't want to spend a lot of time and money helping somebody grow that
Hmm.
makes them more valuable in the marketplace so that they either go and get another job and they leave, or they're coming to ask me for a counteroffer. It's just going to cost me more money, either through direct salary or they're just gone. And I'm the one that spent the money to train them.
No, heck no. Heck no. And let me explain why. Okay. So first of all, again, they're going to get trained, right? But this is beyond that. This is about giving them value. And I can tell you a couple. First of all, we run a survey, and I've got literally hundreds upon hundreds of people who have clearly said this experience has made me more likely to stay at this company.
Really?
Yes. In fact, more, like I believe the last number is about 97% of people who go through a growth space program have said this. So,
How much of that is the growth space process versus
mhm,
the quality of the expert that they are paired with?
it's both.
It has to be both. But that means you got
Yeah,
to
and
keep
it has to be both.
finding more and more experts.
Yeah, so we are doing that. Like, we have a really tight process in place at this point. And we only bring in really, really good experts. And by the way, we also, like, if somebody doesn't like the person they're paired with, we encourage them to change. We don't want you to have a bad experience, right? If you don't like the person you got matched with, tell us. We will match you with somebody else, and you do the process there. That's fine. That we want you engaged. At the end of the day, the message that companies send to people is, we care about your growth. We want you to stay here so that you can continue to develop. You don't need to go elsewhere to grow professionally,
Right.
right?
And if that's why people are leaving, I see your point. If people are
Yeah,
leaving because they want to grow, then your point
yeah,
is you can grow right here. Look, we're investing in your growth so that you don't
yeah.
quit. Because obviously it's cheaper for companies if you don't quit.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It costs about, like, it depends on the level of seniority of the person that has left, but it costs a lot of money to bring in somebody new and train them and onboard them,
Right. And you
right?
waste a
It
lot of
can
time. You get behind.
a lot of time. Like, depending on the level of the person, it can be anywhere between a quarter of a year to a year and a half's worth of salary, right?
Are there
And
any
and
companies though that still are not believers? Right? They just say, you know what, like we don't want to invest. Like, what are you still seeing some what do you call it? Old thinking companies who are just like, no, no, this is how we do things. We're not investing. We don't want to invest this much in our people. They're just not worth it.
I don't think I've seen a single person come on a sales pitch at Growthspace who has said, sorry, my hair's doing a weird thing. I don't think I've seen a single person who has said, this is not interesting to me. Okay, now I'll put it this way. There are big corporations who are planning on getting fully on the digital transformation bandwagon 7 years from now, right? Like, they had a big plan, and all of a sudden COVID hit, and they were forced to make things happen. This is a real stat. 7 years earlier than planned.
Right.
You've got these big corporations who had to adapt to working remotely and working hybrid, and adopting all this technology. They're hungry for these kinds of solutions, because they realize they need to adapt themselves to a very, very dynamic, very changing workforce, and an absolutely new way of doing things.
So what is it typically set up like? Is it you do a one-on-one once a month and then you've got homework along the way? Like what is the typical expert student relationship?
So it usually takes about 10 weeks.
Oh,
It's
so it's
anywhere.
short. It's not
Yeah,
like a whole year program.
exactly. It's a short time to value, which is part of the reason why it's so compelling. Because you see, it's really easy to see results really quickly here. So you can do, usually it takes about 8 to 10 weeks. So the sessions come in once a week, once every 2 weeks, with the expert. And yes, there's recaps, there's homework. You really try to you put the sessions into kind of practical terms between each session. Um, and basically throughout the process, so about halfway through, you're asked to rate your experience and give feedback. And is this going well? Is this not? If it isn't, let's fix it. And then at the end, both you and your manager, by the way, this is another really cool thing.
So your experience then, you saw so many startups, right? That you said that Israeli startup, that real growth phase that happened a few years ago. You saw it, you were part of it. What did you see the mistakes that were made by companies that eventually didn't make it? The ones that failed versus the ones that succeeded. How much of it was based on this kind of stuff, the employee development? Or is startup world different? It's like what you guys are doing much more catered to established companies that they're not worried about survival.
So listen, tech companies were the first adopters of us, right? All of our early adopters were first of all Israeli tech because it was the easiest, right? It was right here. But tech companies in general, global technology companies, were our earliest adopters. Tech companies need this more. Startups need this more than other companies because in a startup, you're constantly having to adapt to a really dynamic environment, right? There's a lot of drain. You make a lot of mistakes. I do think that, especially, I don't know if like super early stage, but I think like the A, between like the Series A and the Series C ish, the people that you bring in that phase, critical for your success, for your culture. You need people there who know their S, right? And who are willing to work their butt off for you and are constantly need to adapt to a changing environment and to help
Right,
you grow.
right, right. Because
Yeah.
that's where you finally raise some real money, and you're
Yeah.
either going to blow all that money and go out of business, or you're going to be able to get the next round and survive to keep playing.
Right. And that is completely driven by the resiliency of your people. Taboola, by the way, which is actually one of Growthspace's first customers, which is kind of cool. But after I was there, right? But I was at Taboola for 4.5 years. I was in that core group of like between the Series A and the Series C, and the people in that core group were so integral in making that company a success. And some of them are still there, some of them aren't. But the major strategic and impactful growth that Taboola went through during that period was, yeah, it was a good product, but the people there are really what made the difference. And I think that is, especially in a dynamic startup environment, that is
So
critical.
where are you guys right now? Where's Growthspace right now? Are you in that Series A, B, C, D zone? What's the life cycle of this company?
So we just raised $15 million in Series A, co-raised by Vertex Ventures and M12, which is Microsoft's venture arm,
Right.
which is really cool. We have grown. I was employee number 18 in August, and by I believe January, February, we'll hit 50
Oh, wow.
people.
So it's rapid growth. So this is
It's
exactly what you're
rapid
talking
growth.
about. You're in that mode right now. Every single
Yeah.
person you hire is either going to help take this thing to the next level or is going to help blow the whole company up.
Exactly. This is money time. Literally, this is money time. It's a lot of pressure, by the way. Like, I'm not gonna lie, right? It's a really, really, really challenging place to be. The cool thing is, yeah, you obviously, like I said, the people that you bring in are really important, but the product that you're selling is, if there's a big gap between what you're selling and what people are buying in practicality, you're gonna fail. Right.
Right.
If you're selling this big dream and what you end up, the customer ends up getting is nothing, with like some air in a bottle, you're not gonna be able to sustain. Look at WeWork. Look at all Theranos, all these companies that were selling these big ideas, but behind them there was nothing. I am so proud to say that people buy what we sell.
People actually want this and it's not a fraud.
Yeah, it's a real, tangible, valuable thing. This is why I love it so much. This is why I'm so glad I'm here. I don't remember the last time I was this excited being at a company
Fantastic,
because
Inbar. This is
it's making a
fantastic.
difference.
This is great. I know it's almost bedtime there for you right now. We're pushing 11 o'clock, so I
It's
can't
true.
keep you any later. I we'll have to have you back. This has been a great conversation. So much about your own experience
Mm,
and how it's analogous to what's going on in the world right now, right? Being part of the Great Resignation, working for a company that's helping people be the best versions of themselves, helping companies make sure they're not losing all these people. They're fighting against the Great Resignation, right? So,
right.
Imar, fantastic. The journey of being Israeli and American all at the same time, and what that unique life experience has allowed you to do. So this has been great. I appreciate the time today, Inbar.
Sure, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, that was Inbar Yagur, VP of Marketing at Growthspace. As you heard, fantastic startup. They're doing a lot right now, and can't wait to see where this company takes this thing over the next couple of years. Now they're hiring so many people. So thank you again to Inbar, my guest, for being on the show. Thank you for listening, for watching Politely Pushy. I'm your host, Eric Chemi. We'll see you next time. Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.